Hello and welcome back to the World Leader Leaderboard, the podcast where we tell you who's winning and losing in politics each week. This week I'm joined by Georgina.
Hello.
And Rory.
Hello.
How are we doing?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Busy
good.
week
Busy week.
of news. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It has been, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're coming out of the summer slump a little bit. I feel like there's
Definitely.
stuff happening
Stuff
again
is
now.
happening.
Definitely.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah.
World leaders, keep doing stuff. It's very useful for us. This is how the World Leader Leaderboard currently stands, but throughout today's episode, we'll be moving people up and down based on their performance over the last week. And with that said, let's get straight into it and start with our winners of the week. Rory, we'll start with you. Who is your winner this week?
So my winner this week is Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, who's had a very dramatic week. This is all to do with the US-Canada trade war that has massively escalated. I was going to say the past couple of days, but in the past week when this comes out.
Yeah.
I'll just give a quick rundown of the headlines of what happened. Obviously, since Trump returned to office, there have been back and forth tariffs between the US and Canada. The long-running goal was to reach some kind of trade, not a trade deal, but a trade settlement. Finally, we at the start of last week, Trump said, well, actually, I should rewind a bit more before that. In July, Trump had threatened Canada with 50% tariffs on $20 billion worth of goods for all the various reasons that he has always used. And those were meant to come in on August the 19th. And then 3 days before the 19th, Trump said that the US and Canada had effectively reached a deal subject to finalization, and that he was therefore postponing the implementation of those tariffs. Sorry, I realized I said 3 days before. It wasn't 3 days before, it was hours before.
Okay.
And then he extended it by 3 days.
Sure. Okay.
And then just before that deadline, sorry, so many deadlines and U-turns and crazy changes. Anyway, just before that delayed deadline, Mark Carney announced that actually those trade talks had fallen through and that Canada was withdrawing from them because of various, what he called last-minute unacceptable demands by the US. He has said that among those demands were unacceptable demands relating to automobile tariffs. But then more dramatically, the US apparently tried to put limits on Canada's ability to strike trade deals with other parts of the world.
Wow.
And also equally dramatically, the US sought changes to Quebec's French language rules, things like rules where they have to have French language on packaging or promoting French language content on streaming sites and other platforms like that. Now, there's a lot of discussion about what those US demands actually were. There isn't a definitive confirmed list. And we don't really have a sense of, did the US come in and say, right, you've got to scrap these rules. You're not allowed to strike any trade deals without us having an oversight. It probably wasn't like that. But it's what Carney said was that it's a cumulative effect of things that basically signaled that any deal that they did strike, they couldn't rely on that being a final deal, as well as these other unacceptable demands. The US, for its part, has said that it's effectively blamed Canada for walking away, saying that the US has the responsibility to impose these tariffs because Canada has retaliated against them for the last year or so. There's been this back and forth, but ultimately we don't know the exact sort of series of events that caused this breakdown. But that is not good for Canada. Having an extended trade war with your largest trading partner and your neighbor, your only neighbor, is bad news. One analysis suggests that it could cost the Canadian economy something like 90,000 jobs if it goes on a certain amount of time. Canada's GDP growth isn't great, so it's going to have an impact on that. It will probably also push up inflation. But the reason why it's good news for Carney, and I'll finally come around to that, is because politically speaking, he has clearly in just such a strong position that it's hard to see him taking a political hit from this. Obviously, if it goes on too long and people start to feel the effects of it, that might change. But currently, his decision to walk away from the trade talks has been backed by lots of opposition politicians. Pierre Poilievre effectively backed it, who's the leader of the opposition. He had Doug Ford in Ontario. He had the Premier of Quebec effectively backing him, and the leader of the NDP as well, which is another opposition party. And then this incredible polling came out from Angus Reid, the Angus Reid Institute, I think it's called, which suggested that 76% of Canadians supported Carney's decision to walk away.
Yeah.
So he has taken a gamble, but it seems to have paid off for now. And he's in this position now in Canadian politics where he's developed this image of being the one to stand up for Canada, especially against Trump. And I think any opposition politician is very scared of being seen to oppose that.
Yeah.
So even with Pierre Poilievre, for example, his response was, he tried to frame it in, the government must come to a trade deal that works for Canadians, but he still had to concede, we support that walking away if the terms aren't good enough. So yeah, I think Carney is just in such a strong political position that he has to be a winner, despite the obviously negative, bad economic impact of this trade war. The other thing I was going to add is that Quebec has not a referendum, an election later this year, and one of the parties, I think it's just called the Party of Quebec, at least the English translation is, which is a separatist party, has previously been vowing to hold a referendum if it's elected, and I think it quite plausibly could be elected, a referendum on leaving Canada. But they came out in this last week and said, we're not going to hold a referendum while Donald Trump is still in office, just because of the turmoil that brings. So that is one other thing that Carney doesn't have to worry about in the immediate future. There is obviously this Alberta referendum at some point soon, and then having a Quebec referendum alongside that would probably just add to the difficulties. But that's another thing that he doesn't have to worry about for now, at least.
It's doing well. Yeah, interesting the kind of dynamic there between kind of how Canada is doing as an economy and as a country, where it is pretty rough, but this show is about judging world leaders against their kind of political ambitions, and kind of 76% approval rating on a major action like that feels pretty unheard of in a lot of the rest of the world. What reaction has there been from the US and from Trump from all this? I mean, obviously they're blaming Canada, but is there any other further
Trump has
reaction?
been pretty furious. He's threatened to increase tariffs even more. But interestingly, he did say that those new tariffs or increased tariffs, I can't remember exactly what they'd be on, but he said they'd come in January 2027, which is a long way away. And everyone's been suggesting that he's very carefully placed that after the midterms, because we say it's bad news for the Canadian economy. It's also not good for the US economy, particularly states that trade a lot with Canada on the border, like Michigan and Maine, which are also battleground states in the upcoming midterms. So I think Trump is probably aware that if this goes on too long and people start to feel the effects of it, that could be bad news for his prospects. There does also seem to be a bit of a divide within the Trump administration, where like a lot of the reports suggest that it was Howard Lutnick who is he the Commerce Secretary? Who came in and sort of torpedoes these talks with his demands, whereas the main trade representative, a guy called Jameson Greer, who was doing the negotiations with Canada, was seen as actually making a bit more progress, and that it was Lutnick's intervention that sort of ruined things. So even within the Trump administration, there's not like a clear position on it.
It's pretty crazy interventions too. Like, I guess you can kind of say like the French language thing impacts trade because it makes it harder for the US to sell goods in because of the rules. But like that feels so arbitrary, and like promoting content on streaming services.
That is what Carney mentioned. I think, we shouldn't just believe everything Carney says. I think he was very clever in how he framed his decision to walk away, and by making it about those issues of effectively sovereignty, he has managed to pull support around him.
But the fact those are even, presumably you believe they even came up in discussion.
It is odd.
Kind of like these kind of disputes are normally about tariffs and trade barriers, and like, sure, some of these things are normalizing trade and making trade easier, but like it really does feel just like an attack on Canada's ability to be a country. And you see it with the rhetoric that, like, JD Vance just the other day, after all this sort of happened, was just I can't remember exactly what he said, but he made some really like snide comment about Canada, should be a state kind of thing. And it's just like, it's just crazy to think about how, I know the US and Canada, like, there have been differences over the years, but like previously, I don't think you could think of two countries that have more of a like settled relationship, and it's just completely been blown up. And it's like, for what reason? I don't really know. I mean, members of the administration too commenting that Canada wants like all the advantages of being the
Yes.
51st state without being it. It's
Yeah.
like, do they?
Yeah,
Or do they
I'm
just
not
want to
sure.
trade with their neighbor? Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean they want all the advantage? Like, well, they're not asking for much, just asking for not the tariffs, right?
Yeah. And it's worth saying that Canada has still not touched their energy exports to the US, which if they really wanted to go nuclear, that could be their final option. I don't think they'll do that because that
go
would
to the moon if he did that. That'd be unbelievable.
that would probably take things, beyond the point of no return. But yeah, it's even the way Carney speaks about it now is like he's using phrases like we got attacked, we're at war, kind of thing, and the US has fundamentally changed. And I think there are people in the US who probably think we'll elect a Democrat in 2028, everything will go back to normal. But I just don't think. I think psychologically it's going to be very hard for Canada to ever.
Yeah,
I also I don't understand what Trump gains politically from doing this. Like, what the average American is not going to care so much about Canada that they want to fold it into part of this great nation, the United States of America and Canada. Like, I don't know why. I kind of get it with China more so because of this great power competition, 21st century, who's going to be on top. But I just don't. I don't get the obsession. Yeah. Like, can someone explain to me, please? Anyone? Like, why would you?
I mean,
it's odd.
Beyond like, does the average person even care? It's like, it's so clearly a fruitless exercise too, right? Like, there's no world in which in the next like 2.5 years that Trump's in office, Canada's going to be like, okay, we'll join.
Exactly.
It's like, if there was a chance of that even, you could say, well, Trump's looking at his legacy. It would be crazy if Canada and the US joined and everyone would be like, oh, Trump did that. But like, it's just not going to happen. So what are you even working towards? What's the objective here?
Yeah. I suppose, though, maybe you touch on it there. Like, maybe he does genuinely believe that he can make this happen in a 2-year period, which is completely delusional.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's the only thing that you could think of why he's going so hard for Canada, is that he thinks he can make it happen.
I mean, I guess it's the same as the whole Greenland stuff, right? Like, he's hoping to kind of tack these things on to his grand vision of America, and it's like, Trump got us Greenland, Trump got us Canada. But like,
again, though, I understand Greenland more than I understand Canada, because like the US has a lot more leverage over Greenland than it does. But Canada is Canada a G7 nation?
Yeah.
Like, it's
crazy.
I don't get it.
Having been to both, I'd rather have Canada, though, I've got to say. I mean, I don't know if the Brits are allowed to say that, but like, we've had it before.
Yeah, we've got the same king, so
that's true. That's true. Okay, well, let's move on from Carney, who is undeniably kind of coming out fighting and like winning this week. He is also moving up on the board. He is already at the top. He's got a +3 next to his name, which indicates he's been moved up 3 additional times beyond the point on the board he's at already. So he's moving up to a +4, really kind of rivaling Xi there for the high numbers. Might overtake Xi, who knows, if the story continues to rumble on. But for the moment, he's moving up on our board to a +4. Georgina, who are you moving up this week?
I am moving up this week Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, who's now at the top of our board after a steady climb, I think, over recent months, which sort of, I mean, it does track the news because that's what we do here. Sorry. Anyway, this is for 2 reasons. The first being that if people have watched the TLDR EU channel, we made a video about Ukraine's successful campaign of striking Wildberries warehouses in Russia, which is Russia's biggest online marketplace. Ukraine has hit all 15 of the largest warehouses, which are being used for dual military and civilian purposes. But now that campaign has also spread to the second largest online retailer in Russia, this company called Ozone. And this is also part of a systematic campaign to target these warehouses and bring the costs of the war back to ordinary Russians in a humanitarian way, I suppose, or at least as humanitarian as you can get in warfare without directly striking civilian buildings or infrastructure. And to go back to the Wildberries campaign, the Russian government is now having to support Wildberries. They're offering 12-month deferral of payment deadlines on VAT, income, and other taxes, showing how extensive these strikes have been and the economic costs that they're imposing. The Ozone shares are now down 30%, so it's hitting Russia's economy that way as well. And that's the first reason that Zelensky's going up. The second reason is that this week, the UK Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has been in Ukraine for his first overseas visit, chairing a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. And Britain has agreed to hand over some of its blueprints for its long-range Storm Shadow missile. It's a joint British-French project. The French call it the Scalp missile. And France agreed as well recently to do the same thing. This comes after last month when the US refused to hand over its Patriot air defense missile interceptor plans to Ukraine. Trump said that it was too big a deal or something. But it also means that Ukraine should be able to eventually start manufacturing its own long-range missiles. There is a concern. There are concerns about the stocks of these weapons that are left, and also questions over how much of a difference this will make to Ukraine, because they cost around $1 million to build in the first place. But I think the intention is that it will give, if Ukraine is able to start developing some of these weapons itself, it will give Ukraine a bit more space and leeway in terms of how it uses them. Because at the moment, Ukraine has to be very selective with the targets that it uses these long-range missiles against, because they are so expensive and there is not a whole lot of them. But in any case, those are two reasons why Zelensky is going up on the board at the moment. And I think there's quite a big gulf now between him and Putin, whereas previously they've been sort of sitting on the same level. Yeah,
no, you're definitely right. He has moved up to the top of the board. And where is Putin right now?
I think he's in the middle.
Oh, yeah, he's sat in the middle between Maloney and Modi. Going back to the wild berries incident, obviously when we made our video about that a week or so ago, we referenced some controversy around this, that it is, as you say, it's not strictly a civilian target, I suppose, because it's not like, I don't know, a town or a school or a hospital as you might see in kind of other conflicts, but it is undeniably a fairly civilian piece of infrastructure to attack. Civilians have died as a result of these strikes. Obviously, Ukraine would push back and say, well, they're also being used for military purposes. It's kind of a hybrid attack. What kind of the international reaction been to this kind of since then? Has there continued to be controversy around kind of Ukraine's kind of more long-range attacks into Russia, or is the international community kind of quietened down?
That is a good question. And I personally have been thinking this as I've been reading the reports, especially the first time I read the report about the initial Wildberries strikes. I was quite taken aback because it's not the sort of tactic that Ukraine has used in a war before. Ukraine's been very careful to not be seen as making offensive attacks against Russia, especially not to launch strikes against a target that Russia has not attacked before in Ukraine. And I'm not a legal expert, so I can't comment on like the international law around striking dual use sites or whatever. But because you wrote that script, did you cover any of the legal questions?
Well, on the thing about the international reaction is that I haven't really seen any international reaction to it, which does sort of surprise me. I mean, anytime anyone outside of Ukraine like expresses concern about these kinds of strikes, it's because their concern is that it's like just escalating the war and it could lead to greater turmoil, rather than a specific concern about the targets of these strikes. But it is it's definitely, again, I'm not a legal expert, but it feels like it's on the edge of legality. I mean, you talk about like the dual use thing. Basically, Ukraine accuses wild berries of or sellers on wild berries selling dual use equipment that can be used by the military, and soldiers, their families, volunteer units will buy them from these sites and ship them to the front lines. But again, they're like, they're not guns and weaponry.
And by that logic, you could be targeting big supermarkets because the Russian army needs to buy its food supplies.
It's like you could probably buy, I don't know if this, you could probably buy like an armor-plated
I think that's true.
vest from Amazon or something. And I don't think we would think Amazon would be a fair target. But I think it's definitely the furthest Ukraine has gone in pushing that limit. And I don't know if they'll go further, but
Yeah.
I don't also, something I mentioned in the script was that, the risk, the goal is that you bring the cost of the war to ordinary Russians, and then, hopefully they turn against the government or push for an end to the war, pressure the government to push for an end to the war. But equally, if they're seeing, their local warehouses where thousands of small businesses, sell their wares, and, having civilian workers there killed in these strikes or injured in these strikes, that could easily just turn the population even more against Ukraine, and sort of harden their resolve to strike back harder against Ukraine. But then again, I don't think Russia has ever really needed an excuse to escalate in Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's just what it's been doing the whole time. So, it is an odd one.
Yeah. I suppose the most obvious argument that someone might make here is, well, like Ukraine is there might be a slightly murky question over the legality of targeting these big warehouses, but Russia has been directly targeting civilian buildings, residential buildings in Ukraine, drone footage of, chasing men around their vans and things and shooting them down. Like, as far as we know, Ukraine has not been doing that in Russia. And I don't think it's fair at all to put, these dual use sites on the same level as targeting civilian buildings, residential buildings in Ukraine. Again, I'm not saying at all that two wrongs make a right, or that just because one is more illegal than another, that these strikes are justified. But I think it's got to the point where clearly Russia's economy has been taking slow hits. Yeah. But none of that has been passed down in a way that's making Putin nervous about the sort of political costs of continuing this war. So Ukraine has instead turned its attention to sort of giving Russia a wake-up call in terms of, many of you individuals might not feel the costs of this war in the way that many ordinary Ukrainians are. So we're going to start hitting things that will make you feel it. Yeah. That will then ripple throughout the population and sort of make Putin realize, is this war really worth it? And also just sort of the visuals, we've seen all of the big flaming images coming out of the Ukrainian side since 2022, because Russia has been hitting these massive buildings. You're now starting to see some of those pictures come from Russia, the oil refineries, the warehouses. And I think that does shift the mental sort of perspective on the war, especially for people around Putin, I'm sure as well, because for so long Ukraine has gone without doing those things, and now it's got to the point where Putin is still not coming to an agreement on peace. There's no sign of Russia scaling back its offensives in Ukraine, and so Ukraine calculates, well, I guess we have to escalate within Russia dramatically so that they can suddenly wake up and realize, is this war really worth it?
It'll be interesting to see how that continues to play out. Obviously, we've moved Zelensky to the top of the board, but both of you are right. That is a kind of delicate balance, both within Ukraine and also kind of with the Russian population as to how they react and how the Russian economy reacts too, I suppose. But for the moment, Zelensky moving up to the top of the board. Georgina, you mentioned one of the things kind of in favor of Ukraine, one of the things going well for Ukraine is kind of the international support. The Coalition of the Willing meeting, kind of headed up by Burnham, guitar playing Andy Burnham.
You guys need to tell me about this. I haven't seen the clip.
I've seen the clip, but I don't really know anything. He's playing the guitar.
Playing the guitar, yeah.
Aww.
It's cute.
Was he playing the Smiths?
I don't think I've actually. I think I've seen it with audio off.
But this is the thing: if someone, if you were making a meme like 3 months ago about what Andy Burnham would be like as Prime Minister, him playing the Smiths in Ukraine
would be exactly
that.
Yeah.
He's smashing it.
Yeah.
But speaking about Andy Burnham, our UK politics podcast, Andemonium, has arrived. It is our new fortnightly podcast where Georgina and Ben sit down and discuss what Andy Burnham's up to. It's a spiritual successor to Starmageddon, to The Big Issue, to Trust Issues. That's maybe all of them. It's the latest incarnation of our political UK podcast pun name podcasts. The latest episode is out already. The first inaugural episode is out already. Georgina, do you want to tell us quickly about it? What happened in that episode?
What did happen in that episode? We talked about Burnham's first few weeks in government, some of the policies that he's outlined, a lot of the question marks that still remain because there's a lot we still don't know about Andy Burnham PM, and some of the impact that the so-called Burnham bounce, the Labour's 10-point or so bump in the polls, is having on other parties and whether it can last. And we also make some predictions for a general election. So if you want to find out what those were, then you better go and sign up.
Love a prediction in a podcast.
Love
it's always
a prediction.
good.
Yeah, I completely agree. As I say, episodes will be coming out every fortnight for the indefinite period going forward.
Well, Andy Burnham's still primary.
Well, that's true. This is always the issue with naming a podcast after a person. People are volatile. But hopefully he's got a good while left for him for our sake, because I think Andemonium's a pretty good one. But if you want to check it out, it is available to TLDR party members right now. As I say, the first episode is already out. The next episode is coming out next week. So make sure you sign up to TLDR party to take a look at Andemonium and to follow along with the latest from UK politics, to see Ben and Georgina a little bit looser than they might be in videos. Here's some hotter, spicier takes. They love a little debate and an argument on that show.
We actually do.
They really
I
do.
do. I'm not sure Ben does.
I think it's the spiciest show we do. So if you want to check that out, it's on TLDR Party. Also on TLDR Party, obviously, you can get the bonus section of this podcast, The Last Move. You can get our news quiz, The Last Word. You can get the Bullpen, our behind the scenes podcast. You can get access to our documentaries, like our most recent one from Greenland, as well as our upcoming documentary from Thailand. Taiwan.
Whoa.
Taiwan. Well,
Spoiler.
it's a reveal.
Yeah.
It's a reveal for the next one, which we haven't agreed yet. We have to go to Thailand now.
Yeah.
All of that is available to TLDR Party members for just £4 a month. So head over there now and take a look. Okay, let's move on to the audience's suggestion for this week. Every week, we allow the audience to choose one person who we either add to the board or move on the board based on your comments on the previous week's episode. Last week, your number one suggestion was...
Anthony Albanese?
Anthony Albanese. You know, what do you want to say?
I don't even... How did it even
why they
start?
do it, because we react to it.
I know.
Actually, sometimes we don't react to it.
I'm
Sometimes
not eating that melon. That fancy melon, I promised you. I'm never eating a fancy melon.
I don't think that's going to get them to stop.
You don't?
No.
Damn it. Anyway,
So
I
what are we
just
gonna
don't
do?
get it.
we're skipping him and we're going to Rob Jetton, who's number 2, friend of the channel.
Yeah.
The only thing I have to say
On
about...
Anthony Albanese.
No,
Oh.
not about Anthony.
Oh, Rob
About
Jetton.
who?
That's our policy from now on.
Yeah. Who, sorry? About this Dutch PM is that I met a Dutch person recently and asked them what they thought of Rob Jetton. They were like, who? And I was like, your Prime Minister, Rob Jetton. And they were like, oh, you mean Rob Jetten.
Oh, really?
So
So
we've been saying it wrong this
We're
whole
saying
time.
it wrong.
Oh.
So
I said it
actually
wrong
it's
to his face.
Rob Jetten.
I mean, is it though? Not in English, it's not.
You think you know more than a Dutch person?
I don't know. I just don't know that we need to try that hard.
But yeah, that's my only
very
contribution.
fun.
So I'm going to have to rely on Rory
So
for
you
this
should
one.
move down for that, I think. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do actually think he should move down, but not for that reason.
Okay.
Ah.
His government, his coalition government, is trying to strike some kind of deal over the upcoming budget. I think as we record this, there's 3 days until the deadline of when they want to have it agreed. So actually, by the time this comes out, maybe they're there, maybe they're not.
Yeah.
But the issue is that his 3-party coalition is a minority coalition, and therefore they need the support from some form of opposition party or parties to support the budget. They can go in 2 directions. In one direction, they can strike a deal with the main centre-left opposition called Progressive Netherlands, which would give them a solid majority for the budget in the lower house and very close to a majority in the Senate. But the problem with that is that one of his coalition partners, the VVD, really doesn't want to work with Progressive Netherlands, and also Progressive Netherlands doesn't like some of the things that's actually in the budget, which I'll come on to in a moment. So if they don't want to do that, their other option is to try and find a right-wing majority for the budget, which would be with parties like smaller parties like JA21. Oh, I think it's actually
Yeah.
YAR21. I
Would
think we
make
got that
sense.
wrong. Yeah. So YAR21, I guess. I don't know how you say 21 in Dutch, so I'm not going that far. And
Why
also,
isn't Jan here?
oh
We
yeah,
need him.
That's true. and a smaller party called the SGP. The benefit of that would be that there's probably more ideological consistency there, but in the Senate, they'd be way further away from having a majority, so they need to try and find even more support in the Senate. But regardless of which direction they go, currently, as we record, there's no sign that there's much progress in either direction.
Yeah.
And I think given they're really quite different directions, they should have by now chosen the track and gone down that route, but they haven't apparently. In this budget, the government wants to cut social spending, social security, welfare benefits, whatever you want to call it. They want to introduce a tax surcharge and raise the healthcare deductible, all to fund a big increase in defence spending, which, as we always say on this podcast, is what lots of European governments are trying to do.
Yeah.
Most parties agree that defence spending should be increased, so that's not the issue. The point of disagreement is how you fund it. So Progressive Netherlands, for example, they don't want to cut welfare spending. They want to, tax higher taxes on the wealthy, that kind of thing. So there's that disagreement at the core of it. So at time of recording, they haven't struck a deal, and it doesn't. All the news reports suggest that they're nowhere near. But at some point, they're going to have to come up with something, I suppose. But this is an issue that his government is going to have going forward as a minority coalition, and just the fact that the Dutch political landscape is so fragmented. On the one hand, it gives them lots of different options to craft majorities, but on the other, it means that you've got so many different small parties to try and please that it's a bit of a pain.
And sounds like even if they do reach an agreement, like you say, depending on which one it is, might then need subsequent agreements to get across to the next line in the Senate or whatever else. It does sound... I mean, it's an unfortunate consequence of starting a minority government in a country like the Netherlands. He was never going to have the easiest time. But I think despite his very friendly smile on the board, though almost menacing, it's not the best photo.
Was it menacing in real life?
No, it was very charming. He was very nice. But despite that, I'm afraid I can't veto it because he was nice to me in person. But he is
friend of the
moving
channel
down
now,
on
though.
board. Yeah,
officially
friend of the channel. We'll put a link to the interview in the description if you don't know what we're talking about. Okay, he's moving down. He is our first loser of the week, I suppose. So let's move on to the other losers this week. Rory, let's return to you. Who is your loser this week?
Well, you inadvertently mentioned Thailand.
I did.
So my loser, well, not because of that, but happy coincidence. My loser of the week is Anutin Chanwirakul, the Prime Minister of Thailand. He is moving down for a couple of reasons. He's sort of dealing with dual crises, I think you can say. The first is that in northern Thailand, there's quite severe flooding at the moment. That's not an unusual thing to happen, but it is a recurring issue that countries in that part of the world have to deal with. But more dramatically, in, I think last week now, there was a wave of arson attacks in 3 provinces in southern Thailand where for decades there's been a sort of on and off again insurgency for either separation or more autonomy. These are regions that are Muslim majority. They border Malaysia, whereas the rest of Thailand is Buddhist majority. So this wave of arson attacks, it didn't actually kill anyone. I think there were a couple of people injured. But it is a sign that this insurgency is still there. And clearly they are, I should say, no one's claimed responsibility, but the assumption is that it was a group called the BRN, which is one of these separatist groups. They're clearly making a statement and saying we still have the ability to carry out attacks and put pressure on the government. Apparently, these types of things do happen usually in advance of visits by government officials to the southern regions, and Anutin and various cabinet members were meant to travel to the south for a couple of days, I think this week. So you can sort of see that as being the event that they were doing this before. The army, the Thai army has blamed or has suggested that groups are doing this because they're frustrated at the government's crackdown on various illegal industries that some of these groups are apparently used to finance their operations. But there's other analysis that suggests that it's more about, putting political pressure on the government, suggesting that, if you do want to revive the peace process, which the government is, has signaled its intention to do, that they do still have some presence and organizational capacity, I suppose, and trying to, I guess, increase their negotiating hand if it does come to negotiations. So yeah, he's moving down for those two reasons. Politically speaking, though, he is actually very secure. He's way more secure than other Thai prime ministers have been for quite some time. And one of the reasons this insurgency has never really been dealt with, peace negotiations have been stop-start and haven't really gone anywhere. It's because Thailand has had a real, really high turnover of governments.
Yeah.
And so, you could look at this and think, well, maybe if he is serious about dealing with it and he does have the political stability that he looks like he'll have for a while, there could be an opening to do something about it. But for now, I think he's moving down for those reasons.
Do you think that is likely? Do you think there is a space for that?
I think
obviously hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. I think he definitely is more politically stable than any of his recent predecessors. But it sort of depends how much political capital they put into negotiations. Because it's easy to say, we want to sort this out, but they also have, the economy isn't doing great. They need to deal with that. There are various other things going on that might feel more urgent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't predict that it's going to be wrapped up easily. But he is perhaps in a better position to do so if he wanted to.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Interesting.
I guess, but don't know if you have the data or any insight, but like how prescient this issue is with the Thai people more broadly. Is this an issue that that he'd be really rewarded for pouring effort into, or is
it's one of those insurgencies that you never really hear about?
Sure.
And I think it's killed something like 7,000 people over fairly extended period of time, but it is clearly has been a deadly one.
Yeah.
But because it's quite like on and off, and it's not so much a it's not like rebel groups holding territory and governments battling, that kind of thing. It's less dramatic than other insurgencies in other places, so it doesn't get as much attention. But I think because it is limited to the very southern regions of Thailand, maybe to most of the population, it is an issue, but not one that they feel in everyday life as much as the economy or political rights and various things like that. So,
that makes sense. Well, for the moment he's moving down, but nice to give him the optimistic up.
He's got scope to move
If you
up.
sort this out, Rory might move you back up again. Georgina, who are you moving down this week? Who's your loser?
My loser this week is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is also the other probably major story in global politics over the past week. Basically, on a few days ago, Israel launched a drone attack in southern Syria, which was a continuation of these sort of haphazard, if that's fair to say, or like what's the word? Intermittent. These intermittent strikes that Israel has been doing in Syria since Ahmed al-Sharaa came to power in December 2024. But then on Tuesday, Israel escalated again and struck an airfield in Idlib province in northwestern Syria, with Netanyahu claiming that this was targeting the expanding Turkish military presence in the region. But Turkey and the US have both come out since that strike and denied that any expansion of the Turkish military presence was taking place. And in fact, the US ambassador to Turkey, who's also the special envoy for Syria and Iraq, Tom Barrack, called it an unnecessary escalation and suggested that Israel may be, quote, acting irrationally ahead of the October election. So for context, Israel has elections coming up on the 27th of October, which are a real make or break moment for Israeli politics, the future of the country, Netanyahu's political career. And at the moment, the polls are showing a neck and neck, very close race between a right-wing coalition and a more centrist, more liberal opposition bloc. Netanyahu's party itself is trailing in the polls at the moment. The Likud party, this right-wing right-wing political party in Israel. But the the sort of centrist opposition coalition also doesn't have enough polling at the moment to get a majority of seats. So it's not clear which way the election will go. And basically he's going down because the international reaction to this strike on the airfield has been very critical of Israel, because it does appear that Netanyahu is trying to manufacture yet another security crisis to create fear in the population and encourage people to vote for his party or the right, say that the opposition won't be strong enough, they won't be able to secure Israel's borders or keep people safe. And Netanyahu's sort of run out of road in a way with the number of countries or actors that he can oppose himself to, because the US is constraining Israel's actions now in both Gaza and Lebanon. So they're kind of off the table. Iran, that's sort of still ongoing, I think, between Israel and Iran, although it hasn't escalated, on the big level that we saw in 2025 for a while. And so instead, Israel's now thinking Turkey, Syria could be the next front to open up. And what was interesting was that the US ambassador, in his remarks, also used the term baiting, which I thought was an interesting word to use, because, it's quite clear that, the international perception is very clear that Netanyahu was trying to bait Turkey into, a new conflict in Syria against Israel. But Turkey didn't respond with military action, as far as I've seen. Instead, Erdogan, Turkish president, accused Netanyahu of pursuing an expansionist and destabilizing politics in the region, which, when you consider all of its other conflicts and wars that are still ongoing, I think is probably a fair assessment. And it also is just bad for Israel, because this is Syria, which was granted a fresh start after December 2024, following, was it 12 years of civil war?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, even more possibly.
Possibly more. And the international community, the European Union, the US, the Gulf states, Turkey, are all now getting involved to make sure that Syria is stable going forward, and to reintegrate Syria into the international community. A stable Syria is a good thing for the Middle East. It's a good thing for Israel. It's a good thing for the security of the people of Israel. So why is Netanyahu undermining that? Question mark, question mark. That was my first reason for moving Netanyahu down. I also have two more. The second is that last month, Israel's tax authority published a report that showed, or that discussed the potential loss of tax revenue from Israeli immigrants. So often high-earning, more secular or liberal Israelis who are now leaving the country as a result both of the ongoing conflicts in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Iran, and also because of the sort of consolidation of power around Netanyahu himself and his party that's been going on since these judicial reforms were put forward in 2023. And at the same time, in the past few weeks, the Tel Aviv University has published a new report showing that each year in 2023, 4 and 5, around 50,000 Israelis have left the country for a period of more than 12 months, of at least 12 months. So this is, by most experts' analysis, the longest sustained period of emigration that Israel has seen in its history. And this also is changing the demographics on the ground in Israel going forward. And the reason it's bad for Israel in the long term is that the population that remains are more politically hardline, more strongly religious, ultra-Orthodox Israelis who tend to have a lot more children and participate far less in the workforce. And in fact, in some cases, this community, the Haredim, an ultra-Orthodox group who separate themselves from secular society, 53% of Haredi men are unemployed, and the average Haredi family takes a net 3,000 shekels, is that right, from the state, whilst the average non-Haredi household pays a net 2,000 shekels to the state. So there's a 5,000 shekel gap. I might have those numbers wrong. I'll have to check, cross-reference with my script.
Though.
But the broad principle is that, the Haredi are a net economic drain, horrible term, but on the state. And as more secular Israelis leave and take their tax receipts with them, this is going to be a structural problem for the Israeli economy going forward. And yet, because they're also making up an increasing share of the population, their influence over Israeli politics is going to become stronger. So that is this interesting tension. And who knows what Israel might look like in 10 years' time, or even after the next election. But yeah, that's why this next election is being cast as a sort of crucial moment in Israel's future. Because if it does go in the more right-wing, more hardline, arguably far-right direction, then that will only exacerbate the immigration crisis, and then it just becomes this vicious cycle. I think I only said 2 reasons there, and I thought I had 3. So surprise, I'm done.
Okay, great. In which case, Benjamin Netanyahu is moving down on the board. He's already at the bottom of the board, so he gets a -1 next to his name to indicate he should be moving an additional spot. Unlike Carney snapping at the heels of Xi at the top. Benjamin Netanyahu is still a little way away from Trump's -8. But, he's on the downward trajectory, and I think has been for a little while now. Well, very comprehensive. Thank you, Georgina. I think we can draw a line under our losers for the week. I think we've had enough losses there. We don't need anything more. So let's move on to our ultimate winner and ultimate loser of the week. Okay, so the way this works is we now get to vote for who we think the ultimate winner and the ultimate loser of the week is, based on the conversations we've just had. If we reach a consensus, then that person moves an additional spot on the board. So let's start with our winners of the week. Your options are Carney or Zelensky. And if we have consensus here, that is an additional move upwards, which is a pretty big deal considering they're both at the top of the board already. So vote wisely. Georgina, let's start with you. Who is your ultimate winner of the week?
I went for Volodymyr Zelensky. I forgot to say the thing that swung it. I didn't even say this before, but Ukraine also had its annual Independence Day thing in the past week, and Zelensky gave a nice speech at that and said basically Putin's trying to has these visions of grandeur and has been doing all these things, but like Russians are now having to queue for fuel. And I just thought it was like a mic drop moment.
Yeah, fair.
I've also gone for Zelensky because I also thought of another reason in that I think it's in the last week, Fedorov, who was Zelensky's former defense minister, possibly, came out and said Ukraine should have elections regardless of the war being ongoing, which Zelensky completely disagrees with. And it could have been this moment where there's this split. Yeah. But actually it seems like everyone just said, no, that's a bad idea, and rallied round Zelensky.
True.
Yeah, so I think that was good
point.
Well, had I had all those reasons, I might have agreed with them, but unfortunately I didn't. I went Carney. I think Zelensky's reasons felt good, but I felt like Carney's is very specific to this week, and that kind of polling bounce and everyone coming behind him, calling off referendum claims and that kind of thing, feels everything's coming up.
I don't actually mind that neither moved though, because there are big caveats for both.
Yeah, that's true.
We also forgot to include the option of Robieta.
No, he was a loser, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
You're about to have the opportunity
Sorry,
to vote
guys.
for
The
him.
format gets me every time.
It's okay. You can spell it however you want with as many kind of little umlauts. And your options are Rob Jetten or the Thai Prime Minister Anutin, or Benjamin Netanyahu. It's another slightly difficult one, I think.
Yeah.
Georgina, who's your ultimate loser of the week?
I actually went for Robieta because I was swung by the arguments of not knowing which way to go.
Yeah.
And also this is about the past week, right? Or
True.
This happened in the past week. Yeah.
Still happening.
I
just hope that by the time this episode comes out, they haven't struck an incredible budget deal.
We're recording one day earlier than normal, so it's possible.
Well, I've ruined it by going for Netanyahu. I just think the thing about the US just seemingly being like, no, we're not having any of this. Tom Barrack is kind of like, he sort of seems to operate on his own little mission, because he also said, I think he also referred to the Golan Heights recently as occupied territory, which is what virtually the entire world considers it as, but the US considers it as legitimate Israeli territory. So he went off script there and then admittedly had to apologize. But it's like, there is clearly like a sense of, like, you know, Israel's going too far by stoking this conflict with Turkey. You know, Iran is one thing, but Turkey, NATO ally.
Turkey would be crazy.
You know, I wrote a video not that long ago about, is there going to be a war between Israel and Turkey? And the conclusion was, you know, it's hard to imagine like an actual war, but there's always a risk of things flaring out of control. And every time I write those, is there going to be a war videos, I always worry that it's sort of willing it into existence, because I was quite skeptical of the idea, but now I feel slightly less confident in that.
I also went Netanyahu for similar reasons.
Yeah, I was going to do that. I don't know why I changed my mind.
Step.
Sorry, everyone.
That's okay. Friend of the channel.
Yeah.
Okay, so no consensus on either one, which means no additional movements, which I think is fair. I think both of them, there's a little bit of ambiguity around. But that's where we are. This is what the board looks like at the end of today's episode. Let us know in the comments of this video who you want to see us move next time in the audience section. And if you've not quite had enough of us yet, the show's not over, because over on TLDR Party, you can watch The Last Move, our bonus section, where the three of us will be continuing to natter about 3 more people. We're going to be talking about 3 European leaders we haven't spoken about in a while. I think there's some pretty good conversations here, actually. So we've not had it yet. It might be
low pressure.
Do you?
I reckon it's going to be a good one. So if you're a TLDR Party member, hop over to TLDR Party, continue watching The Last Move. If you're not yet a TLDR Party member, well, that's yet another reason. You can watch Andemonium, you can watch this, you can watch the news quiz, you can watch the document. You got I don't know what you're up to. You're probably at work, skiving. I know what you lot are like. You've got so much extra bonus material. You know, just a thought. Regardless, we'll be back next week for more winners, more losers, and more World Leader Leaderboard.